The subject of today's lesson is how we think about and how we practice arpeggios. One mistake that I made when I was getting to grips with soloing is how I thought about and how I practiced arpeggios. In this video I want to share with you those mistakes that I made and trying to ensure that you don't make those same mistakes and that how you practice and think about them is good for your long-term progress on the guitar. The focus is practicing them musically so that you can apply them musically and practicing them with real purpose rather than kind of passive technique-based exercises. If you take arpeggios at face value, they have a pretty limited use. Take this definition. The notes of a chord played in rapid succession, either ascending or descending. Because I remember early on in my jazz guitar journey, I kept hearing the same advice, which was you've got to learn to outline the chords of standards using arpeggios. So I knew about the importance of arpeggios, I just didn't necessarily know how to take it from A to B, taking it from technique and just getting them down to music and soloing. So point number one, I started out here and I stayed here for far too long. And that was playing them up and down in 2-octave positions like this. This for me can only be good for two things, technique and fretboard knowledge. It's a foundation phase maybe, and I wish if I could go back in time I'd have done it completely differently. So my 2-octave shapes were too fixed and they were too rigid. And definitely really technique had taken priority over sound. And I really wish I'd started like this on one string. Take E minor 7, and instead of doing this, let's put the chord tones on one string so we can see the distances more easily. So E, G, B, D. E to G, that's a minor third, that distance. G to B, so fret 8 to 12, that's a major third, so that's one semitone bigger distance than the first one. So this is a minor third, fret 5 to 8, E to G, 8 to 12, G to B, is a major third, and then B to D is a minor third again, so fret 12 to 15. It's much easier to see the distances looking at it on one string. It forces us to think more about the distance, and it forces us more to think about the sound created by those distances, because as soon as we cross strings on the guitar, that sense is kind of lost. It's still there, but it's not as obvious, and it really does require good interval knowledge to understand it. Being able to play them on one string, hear them, understand them, maybe sing them, hum them, that's so much more valuable than, you know, shredding those 2-octave arpeggio positions. I also played a lot of those shapes without the knowledge of necessarily, I knew about 1, 3, 5, 7 and stuff like that, but I didn't necessarily think about, oh, between, you know, you go root, third, fifth and seventh, but also it's, you know, it's a third between each one, right? It's, say, between E and G it's a minor third, between G and B it's a major third, and then between B and D it's a minor third, and that's important to know. Application of arpeggios in the heat of the moment in our improvisation works best when you can make an arpeggio work from anywhere on the fretboard, not fixed rigid positions, which is where I got stuck. If I saw E minor 7, I jumped for my E minor 7. Say for example, you won't always be near this particular E when it comes to E minor 7 and you're soloing. So for me, from any particular root, it's important to know the different ways you can make an arpeggio work, because you can always find the next note of the arpeggio either on the same string or on the next string. Let's take E off fret 7 on the A string and we can make it work like so. So we can find thirds on the same string or on the string below. So let's take minor thirds first. Let's take the note E here at fret 7 on the A string and find the minor third from there. So we've got to go a tone and a half. There it is. But I could also get it on the string below on the D string, just there. So notice the shape difference. You've got that or this. So either fret 7 to 10 on the same string, E to G, or find that G on the D string fret 5. Notice the shapes that appear. If I go to the E string for that, same deal. So fret 12 to 15, E to G on the E string, or 12 on the E string and then fret 10 on the A string for the G that are minor third from the E. Take it to the D string. There it is, same distance. Bit more of a stretch down here maybe. If I wanted to get the minor third on the next string, well the next string is a G, so I need the open string. Find E on the G string. There it is on the same string, and because of the tuning of the guitar, it's a fret closer than you think when you cross to the B string, and then start on the B string, there's E at fret 5, there's our minor third, let's find it on the string beneath, there it is, fret 3. So as you can see, that's how you find minor thirds, either on the same string or on the string below. Do the same thing with major thirds. Let's take E again, the major third of E is G sharp. These are a bigger distance when you do them on the one string, like that, see, fret 7 to 11, E to G sharp, and then oddly it gets closer when you do it on the string below. There it is, fret 6 on the D string. To go to the big E, fret 12 to 16, and then crossing 12 to 11. On the D string, massive stretch, fret 2 to 6, or find it at fret 1 on the string below, fret 9 on the G string for our E, major third at fret 13, or the major third. Remember what we said about the B string, everything's a fret higher than you expect it. There it is on the same fret on the string below. On the B string, the E's there, we can get the major third at fret 9, or at fret 4 on the high E. So those are the two really important shapes to learn and find on the guitar, like I just went through. If you know all that stuff, you can easily work out how to find arpeggios and triads. And going back to the one-string approach, this one-string approach is really good for seeing the difference between chords. If you just play everything in parallel, so if you do all of your arpeggios starting from an E, say, let's take a couple chords now, and if you compared E minor 7 to E7 and then E major 7, here's E minor 7 on the B string, E, G, B, D. Root, minor third, perfect fifth, minor 7. Now here's E dominant 7th, notice the difference. Only one note different. We have a major third there at fret 9, a G sharp, and everything else is the same. So E minor 7, E dominant 7th, just that third is our difference. And then let's take E major 7, so one note different to our E7. 1, major third, fifth, then a major 7. But all of these intervals between the notes are thirds. They're either major thirds or minor thirds, which is why it's so critical to know your thirds. Doing it on one string, it's easier to see and hear the differences, I think, and the similarities, because there's a lot of similar notes there. Sometimes just one note changing to make it a different chord type. And the key here is, going back to the word rigid, the key here is we're not being rigid. We're being flexible with the idea from this E, I can easily make a dominant 7th become a minor 7 by having the flat 3 instead of the major third, or I could make E minor 7 become E7 by raising the third, and so on. The other problem I had is I practiced from the root all the time, and sounds really boring. It's the most obvious note to start on. So another important layer to add is, vary the order. Here's E minor 7 in order, 1 flat 3, 5 flat 7. Nice little arpeggio shape. Let's change the order, start on the third. So that went flat 3, 5, flat 7, 1. Put the two, the first bar, second bar. Third bar we've got 5, flat 7, 1, 3. And then the fourth bar we've got flat 7, 1, flat 3, 5. Put it all together. I'm not saying you want to play it all together like that, but when you've got an E minor chord, E minor 7 chord, don't just start from the E, start from the 7. Just sounds it's more of a surprise, or from the 5. Vary that order for interest. Starting on the root is okay, it's a bit predictable, a bit boring. The third and the 7th are much more interesting intervals to start on. And you'll only be able to do that in your soloing if you practice like that. Another thing that I got hung up on is, trying to play all these arpeggios with chord changes, and, the trouble with that in real time against a backing track is by the time you've found where you are, the next chords come along and your head's all over the place because there's too many chords and arpeggios to try and find. So one thing just to take the sting out of that problem, play to a drone. I'm using my freeze pedal to sustain the sound of an E minor chord, and now I'm just going to find E minor, over the neck. Learn to speak it, as I say. Just varying the order. Yeah, that's in order. On one string maybe. Just getting used to speaking the sound of the chords. It's out of time, takes away the pressure, and takes away the pressure of playing to the next chord, and you can just learn to speak one chord type. Here, learn to speak E minor. Remember also, you're not just learning to speak E minor, you're learning to speak minor, and you can easily transfer that. Don't worry about chord changes first, just learn to play over a chord, and then you can put it into a chord progression. Another thing that helps is not getting stuck in one octave arpeggios and finding surrounding notes either side. So the notes of the arpeggio either above or below where you are. So take this little E minor 7 shape. We can find the same notes beneath, or we could find them above. So in the first bar here, we've got the arpeggio in order, all in the same octave. E, G, B, D. But what if I get those other notes, the third, the fifth, and the seventh, in the octave below, so lower than this note, lower than our E. So we've got the first bar, as I said, in order, E, G, B, D. The second bar goes E, drop for the G, then B, D. So it sounds like this. And then the third bar, let's play the E and the G, but then drop for the B and the D. We're still always going E, G, B, D, but it's sounding different because we're not doing it going up in order in the same octave. And then let's in the fourth bar there, let's go, just have the D in the lower octave, so go D, E, G, B. So if I play those 4 bars together, then, and then, and then, we could also get notes above the top note in arpeggio, which is this D. So let's get there's the arpeggio going down, D, B, G, E. Let's put the E higher, let's go D, G, B, E. So instead of going there for the E, go up there, an octave higher. Maybe we could go D, B, G, E. Instead of going, get this, octave higher. And all of those different things make the E minor sound a bit more interesting, a bit fresher. We're still using the same ingredients, root, third, fifth, and seventh, E, G, B, D, but they're going to have a slightly different flavour by grabbing the third, say, beneath, or the fifth beneath, or the seventh beneath. Again, it's about being flexible with how you engage and practice arpeggios. Once you can do some of those things and you're becoming more flexible with how you practice and can find and hear and use your arpeggios, start to maybe introduce an extra ingredient like one note. So let's add in the ninth, which is an F sharp, just between the E and the G. Bit more of a step up into the arpeggio, isn't it? You could also find that on the top, at fret 14 in the next octave. So just E, G, B, D, F sharp. What about a chromatic approach? So before the E, stick a D sharp. It's nice. Adding in a flat 5. So I've got this, there's the flat 5 at fret 6, a B flat, B, B flat, B, G, E, G. What about filling the gap between the flat 7 and the flat 5? So got the D here, the B here, and go B, D flat, sorry, D, D flat, C, B. So we're putting in these two notes, the D flat and the C. So we've gone from, then we had or the last one. All of those, just the introduction, say, of a ninth, a chromatic approach note, or a flat 5, or filling out the gaps between the chord tones, sorry. Again, just bring in additional colours for more interest. The E minor 7 arpeggio is still central here. We're just slightly tweaking it to get a little bit more from it. And think of it as like arpeggio plus. I don't, for instance, practice necessarily my minor 11 arpeggios or things like that. I think E minor, and I can add different colours and flavours. It's a bit like cooking with spices and things like that. Important thing to grasp also is that the notes have a hierarchy. Some notes are more important than others. The third is usually regarded as the most important note. It is to me. That's the note which determines whether it's a major or minor bass chord. The seventh is probably the next most interesting note because there's a bit more dissonant, a bit of character to that one. I'd then probably say the fifth and then the root. This is obviously subjective. You might have your own opinion on this, but it's worth thinking about. You might not have thought about that. You're practicing your arpeggios, but all of these notes, they have a particular role and function to play. This becomes important when you try to change between two different arpeggios too. And my final point today is that when you do, say, try to bridge two chords together, say like E minor 7 to A7, you don't want to just play those in order. You want to learn to connect them by the nearest note. If we were going E minor 7, A7, instead of going up both arpeggios like this, we could connect via the nearest note. We could go, so I went E, G, B, D on the E minor 7, went down a semitone to C sharp, which is the third of A, then it went down an A7 arpeggio. Now, when chords move like this in the 2/5, which is what this is, the flat 7 of the chord is a semitone above the third of the next chord when you're going between a 2 and a 5 chord like this. I've got videos on that topic. I'll link them in the description if that's not something you've come across before. The flat 7 to 3 resolution, really important concept for soloing over chord changes. Learning how to connect chords by the nearest tone is so important, so check out my video on that. So hopefully today there's been a few things that have made you think about how you work with arpeggios. If you've got any questions or comments, then please leave them below. Jazz guitar lessons every Wednesday and every Saturday. Until next time, you take care.